Well, so these two series are connected, interconnected, just as Strange Worlds and Strange Worlds Planet of the Fallen Ones were also connected. The Fallen Ones thing was kind of its own thing, but done as sort of we're all on a planet for 8 episodes, and this weird planet where they talk about ancient aliens, basically. So in the same way that Star Trek Destinations, Starship Locations Destinations, the final one will be sort of a spin-off of the other. So they are using the stuff that we used. And recently I found the old rejection letter and threw it out. Now I found the new rejection letter, which I kept from Voyager. There were 2 of them, and they were virtually the same. And all these years, I was adding alliteration to these 2 rejection letters, not realizing that I had completely added stuff that wasn't there. The back when they did some script submissions, they for the contest, they responded when I wrote to them at the end of the 2 shows to see what happened to the stuff. They sent back the rejection letters after the shows were over, really. They arrived after they were over and they were locked out. I misread that the Voyager one was stamped twice. What it was stamped was logged in and logged out. So, logged out as of receiving the letter. So that wasn't stamped twice, it was once. There was a later stamp, which was misread to be Gauntlet. It means that it doesn't mean they looked at it twice. It means that they filed it twice. And Melinda Snodgrass was one of the people filing it. So I just looked at it back in the day. But Lolita Fascio was the script coordinator. And Snodgrass was under Lolita Fascio's tutelage. So they had that going on. And I was not in the WGA. Still am not in the WGA. And I don't have an agent. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And now that the writers are on strike, and we have the producers on strike for the WGA, we have no, we don't have the producers, the actors. The underling actors, so not the high-paid ones, the B-list actors, the C-list actors. They're on strike. The A-list actors, they don't care. They have mansions. But, yeah, the A-list writers, they don't care. They don't have mansions. It's the ones that are under that. And, yeah, it's interesting looking back on this rejection letter, going like, that's not what it said. Yeah, it didn't say I have the good command of the characters at all. It said it encouraged you to keep writing, but it didn't say I had a firm grasp of the characters. It did not say that. I don't know where I got that from, because it's not in there. The Deep Space Nine one had said, you did have the line, we wanted to do something else with the Dominion, but that was it. That was the only difference. And it was virtually the same as the Voyager one. It said, we wanted to do something else with Tuvok. So it wasn't that there were too many Tuvok episodes. It's like, this literally a form letter that they took 2 lines out and changed. It's the same form letter, so everybody got one. Thousands of us got one. But the fact that we did, Mark's Cards and I wrote a Star Trek story. I think it also helped that our real last names were known in the Star Trek thing through distant cousins, relatives. I think that's why they ended up on the pile in the first place. Because if you look back to Star Trek, original last name, Brown with an E, there was an Elizabeth Brown who worked on TOS and kissed Spock. So they probably saw that name and thought, oh, is that... No. That nepotism helped, even though I don't think we had any connection with her. It just helped to have that name. Oh, that name, I put that name from TOS. It's the girl, the blonde girl from the Last Side of Paradise. The Apple. The Apple, I think it was. But yeah, yeah, so, or it was either the Apple or the Side of Paradise, one of those 2. The one without the space hippies, it was the other one. Space hippies. And then you have, yeah, so I just had to ramble about the other thing. This is the Boimler thing. I pretty much described it. They have a time travel episode. It doesn't mean anything. They just hang out, you know. And yeah, I figured why not. The recent discovery of the other form means that we did indeed go to a Star Trek writing contest and did indeed have letterhead from Paramount. But that was shortly after that, Enterprise started, and they didn't want any of us. They didn't mind the suggestions. They didn't want any of us. And the only contribution some of the writers had, some of the B-story writers had, was to season 4 of Enterprise, in which they brought in Manny Koto and some other people and said, we can try to fix it. Maybe it won't get canceled. But it ended up being canceled. And they tried to fix it. They tried. Yeah, so this episode is related to Enterprise as well. Yeah, they don't do that anymore. So understand that in around 2015, there's a new Star Trek movie, and some enthusiastic fan went over this before in the book called, which is badly written. So that, like, it's like typefaced. It's like written by an AI or something. My Trek Core Experiences novel on Amazon talks about the Trek Core thing and stuff, but it also talks about this enthusiastic fan who took over the internet for like a year in 2015 and went on about how he was gonna like write for Star Trek Beyond, and he wasn't. It's just that his domain name was the same as Star Trek Beyond. The movie was going to come out. Paramount said, cease and desist, we're taking this name back. We're going to use it for the movie. That's all that happened. But he says, oh, I'm going to pitch for Star Trek because Paramount called me. No, Paramount called you and told you to stop. They wanted your title. That's what happened. But that doesn't make as big a story. Oh yeah, so that particular character was spoofed in Starship Location Strange Worlds, and will be appearing in some form of in Strange World Destinations next year. Which is fun. Well, we'll see if it's next year. It probably is next year because we're going to do the Robotech thing first. And what's funny is that he finally gets to pitch. He just didn't get to pitch to Star Trek, to pitch to us. So, well, yeah, we'll take the idea. We'll do it. We'll do it. Unlike the other guy that wrote the Fallen Ones thing, and it was all like, "Don't use my name on your book. I don't know who you are." This other guy, the Star Trek guy, like, I don't care. More publicity for me. Okay, but yeah, yeah. So we've had Boimler show up in our story. Like, it's supposed to be 20 years later because Lower Decks takes place in 2380s and ours takes place in 2400 and something. And apparently all of it takes place before Picard started, really. Well, before season... It all takes place a little after... No, it takes place after season 3, technically. The way they restructured it, because they screwed up and they said 2399, it should have been 2402 to make it line up with the other timeline, and it wasn't. It should have been. So they screwed up. There's 3 years that are missing. They're just not talked about. So yeah, they screwed that up. Yeah, Picard should have been 2396 to 2399. The series, the 3 seasons. Wasn't. They made it later. They screwed up. They didn't add the years up correctly. They added the decades up wrong and the years correctly. So they got the star dates and everything wrong. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. They make fun of that in this story. They have the 5-digit star date. Only the star dates on Strange New Worlds don't line up with the star dates with Kirk. And they don't line up with Next Generation because Next Generation rebooted the star dates as a 2323. And they started over, star date 0, 2323. Early 2324. Which would be which would correspond with 2023 and 2024 in this timeline. And also, this timeline it would now would be 24 and 2401 and 2402. Yeah, so now, now that it's 2023, 2024, would line up with Picard season 2 and 3, and 3 after that. And now it would line up, but it didn't line up in the season 1. It should have been earlier. But yeah, and they don't do super estimations at all anymore. They have strict guidelines that say don't do that. They have let up on the guidelines, thanks to us fans. The guidelines were too strict. Went back and said, no, you can do any length of fan film you want. Who's going to sit through it anyway? What are we worried about? You can do any uniform and costumes you want. They don't need to be perfect. In fact, we'd rather they not be perfect. The acting can be subpar because you're not actors, you're fans. Go ahead, do fan films. Just don't make a profit. Don't make any money on your fan films. So that's what they said in the current updates on that. Around 2020, they changed the rules again. So the fan films have been popping up again. So even the Steve Shives channel has gotten into the act and is saying, oh, Stranger World is cribbing our stuff too. Our fan film thing. And I would say in terms of the popularity of both of his fan film and mine, that his has more of a chance of being noticed, but not by much. I have got those books that are with the names changed around. So the books are on Amazon, but the names have been changed around, so it's a spoof. So it's okay to make a little bit of a profit. It's not going to make hardly any. It doesn't. But his fan film really isn't. I mean, it's Star Trek tropes and stuff. It's not. It's not. They're not borrowing from that. They just came up with similar tropes. It's like, okay, we're gonna have an episode where Spock and Kirk are trapped in a shuttle or something. Or we're gonna have an episode where there's a triangle going on. It's like they did that. They've done that before. We're gonna have an episode where a cybernetic race of bad guys gets on the ship and does stuff. Oh yeah, they've done that before. We're gonna have a race of lizard characters. They don't have money for that. They'll have funny foreheads. That's it. So the Stranger Worlds episode is called These Old Scientists, and it rambled on about other stuff, but it was kind of redundant. It's not really redundant. It was kind of part of it because I kind of had to put that in there because not to it's a conspiracy. He had to cover his ass. Cease and desist. No, I did not get a cease letter. Did not say you can't do fan films anymore. They did not say that. I didn't receive any cease letters. They're okay with it as far as I know. They're fine. Action figure Star Trek. For the Star Trek people and actors at conventions that have seen it. They said, your fan film was fine because, it's action figures and they're not going to care. Action figures. That's all. You really aren't going to care. They should make Playmates action figures of the Lower Decks characters in photorealistic and non-realistic form. They should make. They made Prodigy figures, but I don't think they're ever going to release them. And Prodigy was canceled, but at least they got to the end of technically season 1. Prodigy just needed to air somewhere other than just the Nickelodeon thing and the Prime thing. Yeah, then it would have been taken off more. It was actually darker than the other one. It wasn't really that much for kids. It was kind of dark. But it also included a Transformer, including Dreadnought, which is a G.I. Joe name, but he's a Transformer. He looks like something out of a Michael Bay Transformers. And there were recent things, the basics of Generation 2 and online, and basics of Legion Maximo, and a bunch of those other things, and Solus Prime, and yes, and it is in keeping with the IDW stuff, and some of our stories have touched on those particular things in Transformers, just as we've done in Star Trek one. Yeah, we did our homework with that. A lot of those scripts, though, are not stuff we wrote. A lot of those Transformer scripts are stuff other people wrote, and we translated it, made a fan film out of it. I think there's only been like one person that complained out of all the others that were perfectly okay with it. And mainly they complained because I got the character wrong. The one guy is supposed to be this other guy. But other than that, didn't say don't put it up there. The next season of Starship Locations will look more into the Cillian universe than the other ones did. And You don't need to have seen the books to get it, because I wrote those scripts to take us to the planet as though we were exploring it for the first time. All of the Steve Scheid stuff, all of the other stuff. Let's go there and just set up a story, and boom, you're down on the planet. Do that. That's your hook. You don't need to have anything other than, this is a strange planet we're going to. You don't need to know the backstory of all the minutia of how it happened. And that's probably for the best. Planet with a weird portal, like this episode. Planet with a weird time portal they go to and they visit. Or planet with a weird high school on the planet. Clearly the Orville people had watched at Starship Locations, and they also had read the books. And there was an episode of the Orville last year that was in a Pine Hill type high school. Although they could have just said, okay, tropes. What if they went to a high school? What would happen to them? Sure, tropes, but how? No, it was too close. They got everything right except the level, how many floors the school had. It only had one floor. It was spread out on the ground. But they made it two. No, it was one. But yeah, but they could have made that assumption, because when describing the school from Starship Locations, described it as there being a little kids section and an adult and a high school and junior high section. They could have misinterpreted that as, oh, there's two floors, and there's a kid floor down below and one on top. But that's not what happened. It's that they're spread out, two next to each other. Yeah. Trying to describe this Star Trek story and rambling on about the other stuff, but that's what we do. So, yeah, so we have a lot of fan stuff that's influenced the Star Trek, and I've mentioned that before, and even us, and we have not been pitching. It's just that they've been coming up with the same tropes we have. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they had a Q one or something. They would rest this story and say it was more like Turlane back then. And there's some gags in there that actually work. That's travel. When a piece of the old ship within the ship, there's a piece of this. They're able to fix the time portal because there's a piece of the old ship, the metal down in the engineering. Spock and Boimler blowing up some kind of device to get to the metal. They couldn't. Yeah, so there's a bunch of and giving them the stuff that turns them animated at the end. Lord X. Oh. The pin-up lady. Very crude. Even his take on insurrection, the dialogue is fine, even if the jokes were silly in the movie and the plot was a little silly. The dialogue was fine. I treat Star Trek Insurrection as a comedy episode, an okay episode of TNG, and not necessarily worthy of a movie necessarily, but it's a comedy episode. And then there's Nemesis, which they really messed up, and that came out in 2002. So in order for the other story to work, it should have come out in, for it to be, that's the problem. See, 2002 is 2379, which means if you line that up, 2379, 2002, which means that when Picard premiered in saying it was 2399, it shouldn't have been 2399 because it wasn't even 2020 yet. In 2022, it would have been. So there. 2399. It's 22 because 2002 to 2022, 20 years later. No, they could have just said in Picard season 1 that it was 2397, and that would have been fine. That would have worked. But they didn't do that. Jumped ahead a couple of years in season 2, 2401. That should have been 2022, roughly. 2023 now, actually. And then jumped to the third one being 3 years after that. Should have been 2404, but it wasn't. They kind of cribbed it a little bit. 02, I think. It's also odd that in Star Trek they'll have like universe changing moments, Borgs and stuff. They'll just ignore the other Borg lady, or they'll have universe changing moments, and it's like, well, you didn't do that, you didn't earn that. So yeah, it's like, does each movie change the universe entirely, or just some of it? Maybe that was the problem with Insurrection and Star Trek 3 and whatever, because it wasn't a world-changing event. It wasn't like, see, even Star Trek 2 wasn't a world-changing event. Oh, literally a planet blows up, and it gets reformatted. But it's not an earth-changing event. Star Trek 4, earth-changing event. Nemesis implying they're going to go to Earth and not doing it. Not worth-changing event. They're in a nebula the whole time. Kills the Romulan Senate. Okay, that planet has changed. But yeah, Star Trek 09, a planet-changing event. They destroy Vulcan. Why? Why do that? That makes no sense. Why make him super powerful to the point that it's ridiculous? Blow up a planet with a mind thing. Not knowing how that works. Of course, in Generations, they're blowing up stars with a rocket. There's no current element at all in a rocket that could do anything to a star. I don't care if there's like the Taxutat from Next Generation, which is kind of what they used in that movie. Even that is silly. You can't destroy all nuclear reaction in a star with a device the size of a rocket. It's not going to happen. Even the size of a planet-sized Jupiter couldn't do it. This would be a planet, a gas giant planet. It never is. Freaking, But yeah, you can't destroy a star. Star Wars movie with a star goes into the planet and blows it up. No, that doesn't happen. You wouldn't even blow up Vulcan. That mining ship had a laser beam on the end of it. It wouldn't have blown up Vulcan. It would have punched a hole in the ground. The lava would have spurted up. And that's it. Why would that blow up a planet? Doesn't make any sense. Really, really doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Then they say, oh, well, what about bumpy-headed aliens and preservers and all that? Well, that makes more sense because budget constraints. But yeah, your tropes are silly when you have, oh, here's a planet-ending disaster. We're going to blow up a whole planet. It's like, don't do that in your movie. Just don't. Don't do that. Don't blow up a whole planet. That just doesn't make any sense. The disbelief is suspended enough when you have something like Q, or you have an alien that's long-lived that wants to go to a nexus. That just, don't blow up a planet. That just doesn't make any sense. Or in the early sci-fi, there would be all, oh, it's in another galaxy, because we mixed up galaxy and solar system. And they'd often grab stars that they knew were, close by, but bright. And they would say, oh, Rigel, Deneb. It's used innumerable times. Rigel and Deneb and Vega. And even though those places wouldn't really technically have any planets, had Revial in orbit of them. Blue giants and red giants. Beetlejuice. No. Well, we've been over that too. The tropes. Rambling on about this episode because I really didn't want to discuss the episode. Apparently, it's fine. All the other stuff is added on extra. I've really got nothing much more on that. We're just covering bases here, going like, oh no, we didn't actually do those things. We didn't remember it the right way. It's like a Mandela effect. I could have sworn it said that, but these things didn't say that. It turns out they were remembered wrong somehow. It's like, no, we weren't that important, but for some reason we are. I don't know why. Because we didn't write for them. I think part of the reason they had a writing contest in the 90s was to avoid another writer's strike. They had one in the 80s, and they were worried there would be one in the 90s. So they're like, well, if we just let a bunch of like B writers write for us as scabs, cool, then we can put them in there. Write for us. Yeah, I didn't write as a scab. I was never hired to do. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't have an agent. That was part of the problem. And even if, I did go to eventually go to writing and editing classes in school and stuff, and after that I was English and journalism. I did take writing and editing classes. I could have taken that extra class to be my own agent. So I could have, at the end of journalism class, I could have taken an extra elective to be an agent, and then joined the WGA and Writers Guild as an agent, and I'd be my own literate. Then I could tell, if they still did submissions, which they don't, I could tell the script people, oh yeah, I'm my own agent. I have here's my credential. Here's my agent. I'm an agent. Yeah, I'm my own agent. So talk to me. I have no other clients, just me, and yeah. They'd be like, no, you can't do it that way. You have to be known as an agent. Just be your own agent. Well, it's fine. Write your own books then. Yeah, so, yeah, the autofocus is changing color massively, like all through this. It's weird. Yeah, it's like going pink and going orange and going pink. Now it's kind of gray. What's wrong with that? Sensor. Anyway, that's it.